everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Box on the Job. Today we're out here fixing a leak underneath someone's cabinet. So they came out and they removed the cabinets already. As you can see, we got a nice break there on that 90 right there, so that's no good. We're gonna get that exposed a little bit. My first thought was to try and get this T out of here, so I'll open that up a little bit, but that really would be the best way to do it if it didn't if I didn't run into what I ran into over here. Over on this left side is actually the edge of the window. So as you can see, I'm struggling to get that out of there. That's because there's a big old pile of studs over there and about a stud gap in between. So putting a coupling in there ain't gonna work. So we'll just cut out this section right in here, leaving that 2" by 1.5" T alone. And the best thing for this application would be to use a socket saver, then tools that clean out that fitting. But I didn't have one on the truck. But what I did have on the truck was a 2¼ hole saw, which works just okay as a socket saver. 2 3/8 is probably the perfect size because that's the exact size outer diameter of Schedule 40 2" pipe PVC. But yeah, the 2¼ will work. It just takes a little extra work and a little bit of finesse. That way you easy there. Don't want to snag yourself up in it. So yeah, as you can see, it takes a little bit of extra finesse to run it with the hole saw, but with a little bit of patience, you can get it done. So we just keep working it and get all of the little pieces out of there, popped and pried out. And like I say, it's quite a bugger to get them with the hole saw. Socket savers, big time easier, but you can get it. As you can see, I got a little street fitting there to gauge it and get it a nice perfect fit. We want her nice and tight. That way the glue seals up good and we don't have any leaks. It's not a good time doing it this way. Definitely should invest in a set of socket savers. I will be very shortly, because this just took way too much time. But eventually it did work, and my fitting is stuck in there. It's gonna work. That's not the fitting I'm gonna use. We're gonna have to put in a couple of 90s in there because that's all the room we've got. But first, let's get our 3" clean out T all set up and ready to go. We've got a 3x2 bushing to reduce down because that's all we've got room for here. But yeah, let's get our clean out T and transition there, our reducer, set up on the pipe because that's going to be rigid anyways, so we'll be all set up. Now we'll get a couple of other fittings in here and eyeballing up. Unfortunately, there's not really any play in there, so this is going to be a real tight fit for everything. But if I'd stop fiddle-farting around, I'd realize that I could just got to get it done. Long sweep, no, that ain't gonna work. And neither is that 45 offset. Nice try. Just gonna have to use the fittings that you got laying there. So we'll get these primered up, get a pup piece cut, and we're gonna put that into one of the 90s and get set up to slide that in the one that we use the hole saw socket saver on, to get that one lined up back in the wall. That way we can get our other piece measured up. Use a lot of glue on any fitting you use the socket saver on because it's gonna be a little bit looser than a factory fitting every time. But that's okay. Put a little bit of glue on there. Nice little courtesy wipe around it, and make sure you check real good for leaks. Now, get this other piece lined up. As you can see, we're gonna need a little bit longer than a pup piece with bottom. Good to know how to use your measuring tape. So we'll get those pieces cut. We're gonna get them both glued into the 90 at the same time. All right, we'll put them both together. And then once we have both of our pieces together, make sure you know which one's the long side and which one's the short side. Get her nice and trimmed up, just how you want it. Get her all prepared. There you go. Got it trimmed how you want it. All right. Now we're gonna primer them both, glue them both, and we're gonna put both of them in together. And what do you know? I was freaking out over nothing. It just went right together. So a couple more courtesy wipes, and there we go. It's a connected system again. And last thing, put a little bit of pipe dope on the clean out cap, and there we have it. We have basically a sealed system. But let's go over to the tubular underneath the sink, because that's not very sealed. This has been leaking pretty bad. So we're gonna get all of this taken out, and we're just gonna start fresh. For the very least, I need to test my my other side there. So these basket strainers are pretty rusty and crusty. As you can see, something's been leaking. That floor is pretty rippled up. These are pretty seized on there. I had to go out and get a screwdriver to pop them off. You can see them gaskets rotted right out. I'm sure that's where some leaks were coming from. But let's get all of them out of there, get all of them thrown away. Let's get all the plumber's putty scraped out of there and then wiped out of there. Nice, clean surfaces. And we aren't going to be going back in with plumber's putty either. We're going to be going in with some silicone. So let's get our basket strainer kit out, disassemble it there. We're going to get rid of that rubber piece. With this being a steel sink, there's not really any point in putting that on it. If you're putting it into a sink that's like marble or stone of some kind, you know, it's or china, you know, it's probably worth putting that rubber gasket on there to protect the sink. But this sink doesn't need any protection. We've got stainless steel up against stainless steel. I leave the piece of paper in there so that it can spin a little bit if it needs to, that cup, more easily as you're tightening up the nut. But then you get that nice and wrenched down, and you shouldn't have to worry about a leak if you get your silicone on there real good. As you can see, we're putting a little more silicone on. I had a couple of tubes of almond silicone that I did not mean to buy. I meant to buy white. So this seemed like a good opportunity to use them, because when you're putting them on a basket strainer, you should get it cleaned up enough that you don't see any of it anyways. I mean, what color is plumber's putty? And people use that stuff for drains all the time. So I think almond is going to work just okay. We'll just make sure it's nice and cleaned up so nobody sees it. Okay, now we're going to take these little tail pieces, flanged tail pieces. The basket strainer comes with the nut that we're using, as well as the flanged tailpiece gasket. Make sure you get that gasket in there, and then get them tightened up. And next thing, we're going to put our tubular kit together for a double basin sink. And you probably are going to have to trim the tailpiece. They make them for basically all sizes. I had to take about a ½ inch off of this one, and then she lined up great. But as you can see, my drain's going out the wall there on the other side. So let's line ourselves back up. There we go. Now we're headed the right direction. I'm going to get everything tightened back up and get ready to start gluing some pipe together. We're going to put a glue trap setup on this. It's a little more sturdy and, in my opinion, a little less likely to leak than a full tubular trap setup. So with that glue trap setup, we're also going to be putting a Y on with a clean out. That way we can easily run the snake down it, since we aren't going to have a removable weir anymore. So get our clean out Y set up there, and make sure we tip up the Y a little bit. That way when water's flowing down it doesn't come back out, as it's really good for underneath sinks to get grease cleaned out, so you can run hot water with your snake. So make sure we pick that up a little bit. And then we're going to trim off this Y a little bit, as well as put together our tubular adapter into our trap there. And then our tubular adapter will go right there on the bottom of that tubular T. So we've got just a lot less of them tubular fittings, which just seem more likely to leak to me than regular fittings. But did not have room to get any crazier than using the tubular piece in there for the double basin. We're going to put a little bit of pipe dope on that nut there, because there isn't any gasket on that. That's pretty much where I put pipe dope. If there isn't a gasket that seals it, the threads are doing a portion of the sealing, so you need to put some pipe dope on there. Put a little bit of pipe dope on our clean out cap. We're back together. It's time to start cleaning up, running a bunch of water, and making sure we don't have any leaks. And if we don't have any leaks and we're all cleaned up, it's time to get out of here.